Introduction. The final week at the beginning of the film, we meet Detective William Somerset, Morgan Freeman, who has only 1 week left on the job before retiring. Somerset is an aging, refined, and intellectual man who has spent years in a city soaked in crime, corruption, and violence. Cynical and burned out, he believes the world is irredeemably rotten. At crime scenes, he pays attention to the smallest details, chalking around a drop of blood, asking questions others would overlook. He is soon joined by his new partner, Detective David Mills, Brad Pitt, who has volunteered to transfer to the city. Young, ambitious, and hot-headed, Mills arrives full of hope with his wife, Tracy, Gwyneth Paltrow. From the very first moment, Somerset and Mills are complete opposites. The older detective is calm, thoughtful, and cynical. The younger one impulsive, arrogant, and fiery. The first crime, gluttony. Their first case is a gruesome murder. In a shabby apartment, they discover an enormously obese man tied to a table. He has been forced to eat until his stomach literally burst. Somerset suspects immediately that this is not a random killing but part of a larger plan. The setting is bleak, rotting leftovers in the fridge, filthy walls. The grotesque corpse slumped at the table. An autopsy reveals that the man ate continuously for hours, his body showing bruises from being kicked. This was no accident. It was torture, a punishment for the sin of gluttony. The second crime, greed. The next victim is a wealthy lawyer, found murdered in his apartment. Written on the floor in blood is the word greed. At the scene, Somerset notices missing carpet fibers. Beneath them, he finds a hidden clue that leads to one of the lawyer's clients. This proves the killer is working methodically, delivering carefully planned lessons to society. Somerset shares his theory with Mills. The murderer is selecting victims according to the 7 deadly sins: gluttony, greed, sloth, lust, pride, envy, and wrath. The third crime, sloth. A year-long nightmare emerges in the next case. A drug dealer, missing for over a year, is found in his apartment. His emaciated body is strapped to a bed, covered in sores, surrounded by insects. At first, the detectives think he is dead, until they realize he is still alive, kept barely breathing for a full year. On the wall is the word sloth. The discovery shocks both the police and the public. This killer doesn't just murder. He creates elaborate, sadistic art out of suffering. Somerset and Tracy's conversation. Meanwhile, the story dips into private life. Tracy, Mills's wife, secretly meets Somerset. Tearfully, she confesses that she is pregnant but terrified of raising a child in such a city. She hasn't told David yet. She asks Somerset for advice. Somerset, visibly shaken, reveals his past. Years ago, his lover became pregnant, but he persuaded her to have an abortion. He didn't want to bring a child into this world, and he has regretted that decision ever since. He urges Tracy, if you want to keep it, tell your husband, otherwise, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. The fourth crime, lust. The next case brings them to a seedy nightclub. A prostitute has been murdered, but not directly by the killer. Instead, John Doe forced another man at gunpoint to use a horrific, custom-made weapon to carry out the act. The man, traumatized and weeping, confesses what happened. The crime scene is unbearable, even for the hardened detectives. Mills erupts with rage, unable to comprehend how someone could commit such a monstrosity. The fifth crime, pride. A famous model is found dead in her apartment. Doe drugged her, then gave her a choice: disfigure herself by cutting off her nose and live, or remain beautiful and die. She chose death. On the wall, pride. At this point, Somerset is convinced. John Doe sees himself as an instrument of God, carrying out a twisted form of divine justice. The investigation stalls. Frustrated, the detectives search for leads. Somerset studies classical literature and theology, Dante's Divine Comedy, Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Mills grows more impatient. He wants fast results. With the help of an illegal FBI contact, they track down a suspect's apartment. The encounter with the killer, but before they can act, the killer himself appears. John Doe, Kevin Spacey. A violent chase ensues, ending with Doe escaping. In his apartment, the detectives find hundreds of journals filled with detailed notes, photographs, and years of obsessive planning. Clearly, this is a man who has devoted his life to this masterpiece. The killer turns himself in the next day, Shockingly, John Doe walks into the police station, covered in blood, and calmly surrenders. He confesses to the murders, but says two sins remain. He will only reveal them if Somerset and Mills accompany him to a secret location. The drive into the desert, the three men travel together into a desolate wasteland. In the back seat, Doe speaks with chilling calm. He insists the world is corrupt, that people live in sin, and he merely exposes the truth. Somerset listens in silence, while Mills angrily tries to provoke him. Doe then turns personal, admiring Mills's wife and family life, hinting ominously at what is to come. The famous scene, "What's in the box?" In the barren desert, a delivery van approaches. A driver hands Somerset a large box. Somerset opens it and recoils in horror. Inside is Tracy's severed head. Doe reveals his plan. He represents envy, jealous of Mills's life and wife. Mills now has a choice: kill Doe in anger and become wrath, thus completing the 7 deadly sins, or let him live. Somerset pleads desperately with Mills to put down the gun, warning him that if he shoots, Doe wins. But Mills, shattered by grief and rage at the murder of his wife and unborn child, cannot resist. He empties his gun into Doe, fulfilling the cycle. The ending: John Doe is dead. His plan is complete. Mills collapses in despair, while Somerset restrains the other officers from harming him. The film ends with a bitter truth. Evil has triumphed. In its own twisted way, in the closing narration, Somerset quotes Hemingway: "The world is a fine place and worth fighting for." Then he adds, "I agree with the second part." And with that, the story closes. A world perhaps beyond saving, yet still worth the struggle of a few who refuse to give up.